Hollingsworth. I am on here doing something brand new with you all. First of all, let me say that this is pre-recorded, okay? So you can't say hello and don't leave because I know you guys hate it when I say it's pre-recorded and then you leave because you think it's going to be something that you won't be able to participate. You know you can't participate. And so you think it's going to be something that you're not going to really listen to, but this is not an announcement. So trust me, you're going to want to stay. This is called Transpirations with Alison. I had put up, if you guys remember, it was like a flyer back in September, actually the end of August. And it said, coming in September, Transpirations with Alison. And what that is I am interviewing senior leaders about their life. Most of the senior leaders in this lineup are going to have churches that were very challenging. Some of them ended up having to close. And I wanted to have a different lineup of interviews where I could talk to people about their backstory, things that you guys don't even know about, and to correct some error, okay? To correct some misconceptions, to squash the gossip so you can really hear it from the source. So today, I have Minister Katrina Boatright joining me. I am like, she's my first guest. I am so excited, you guys. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And yes, we are going to eventually talk about family and faith. Many of you all were members. I was a member for 6 years. And we all know that it was a very challenging time for many of us. So I felt like, what better time now? It's been well over 10 years that we can discuss some things that happened. But I also want to really discuss things about our life. This is going to be inspirational for you all. It's going to be, for some of you, it may even be impartation if you're willing to accept it. That's going to be life-changing, and it's going to be informative. So we're going to get started. I'm going to bring her in a second. I want to definitely give you her bio because the proper introduction is definitely something that needs to be done. So Katrina Boatright is unapologetically God's daughter and an ambassador for the kingdom of God. She is passionate about her role as a mother. She is blessed to have 4 wonderful children, Olivia, Mark Jr., Caleb, and Mylan. I was kind of pausing you guys. I'm looking at all of their educational credits. Wow. Olivia has a doctorate, Juris Doctorate. Mark Jr. is a certified audio engineer. Caleb has a master's in public affairs. And Mylan has a Bachelor of Science and she's a biomedical engineer. Wow, this is great. Katrina has a master's degree in organizational leadership. She is a multifaceted leader, a transformational speaker, a purpose builder, and a thought strategist. She has over 25 years in ministry and transformational leadership. Katrina has served as the co-pastor of a church, leading 1,200 plus people, a corporate manager over 2 states, and an executive leader within local government. She is called and graced to empower leaders and people to transform their minds, shatter glass ceilings, and expand their personal and professional vision through understanding God's assignment. Katrina has a unique way of reaching people right where they are, drawing them in and inspiring them toward growth, change, life elevation, and mobilization. She has traveled internationally for over 10 years, teaching, educating, and imparting to audiences from Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, and the United Kingdom. Katrina seizes every moment to ignite change and present opportunities where everyone rises to advance the kingdom of God. I am so happy to be able to bring her in with me right now. So welcome.
Hi.
Welcome, Katrina. I'm so glad to have you as my first guest.
I know.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for the opportunity. And I'm excited about your new Transpirations. That's powerful. And I'm looking forward to helping you get that kicked off.
Thank you so much. And I'm not blowing smoke because we've been knowing each other since we were whenever, way back, since we were teenagers. I couldn't even think of a person that I wanted to choose to kick this off with me. We've got a lot of history. We've got some lots of stories to tell. And I said, I wanted someone that I could feel comfortable with, that I know that's like family, and that I've been down through the years in some of their journey as well. And I said, what better person than Katrina? Because we've got all kinds of stories to tell. And
All kinds of
when it comes to church, leadership, marriage, everything that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just start out. We're going to, like we said, weave our way into this. And like I was telling you all, I said, this is really going to be something to inform you, inspire you, and to offer up an impartation if you're willing to accept it, because it will definitely be life-changing. When we're done, you're going to say, I am so glad that I stayed on here. And those of you that are just joining right now, this is pre-recorded, but don't leave, because it's really going to be great. So I want to ask you, Katrina, first question is, what is your kingdom purpose? What do you consider your kingdom purpose to be?
You know what? I think similar to many, we all have a core purpose, right? To spread the gospel, right? To spread the good news, to go and be like, make disciples in every nation. So that is definitely what I'm called to do. And I think the way that I'm called to do it is through teaching, through education, through developing, right? I feel like education is one of my main purposes in how I advance the kingdom, right? I feel like my assignment is to equip and to mobilize people through the word and through a prophetic voice. I think I carry both aims. I think I'm called to be king and priest, right? I think I serve in government because I'm called to be there as carrying that king assignment, to carry on my shoulders and to influence in that space, while I still stand behind a pulpit and share the word, also. So I think I carry both opportunities. And I think that is the core of my kingdom purpose, is to help people be ready to live the way they're supposed to live, equipped on this earth.
One thing I can say as a student in some of your classes, that you teach in a revelatory way. That's what I experienced. Like, you bring principles that we think we knew, and you begin to crack them open and explain them from, it's almost like like an imparted supernatural revelation of the scripture and how we're supposed to live like in the kingdom. And it was really, really enlightening. It was educational. I was in your class, I think we did like about 4 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of change. Yeah.
And I hear that often as fruit, and that just confirms my purpose and what God's given me specific to a general call. But my specification in it is to help bring revelatory experience and knowledge, and to help people encounter God's real word in a real way, right? That brings that light bulb experience that you can now transform because of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you for that.
And your prophetic gift was, invaluable. I remember, I'm not even going to expose myself. You at the end, you gave me a prophecy, and I'm like, okay, God, really? But the prophetic gift is just awesome. And it was a word of correction, and I received it. And it really steered my life back on track at that point, because I was really kind of like mad about a lot of stuff, and it just sat down. And so it was needed. And when you don't have I'm not saying that people that don't have a prophetic gift are short-sighted or anything like that, but it's just that it's when you have it, it's invaluable, especially when it's coupled with a teaching gift. So now that we are in the post-pandemic era and its obvious effects globally, how would you, rate the health of the national church? Because there's a lot of churches that ended up closing, didn't come back, have changed the way they do church. Some people like it, some people don't. We still got pastors trying to get folks to come back to church. So how do you think the health of the national church is today?
I don't have the corner on that, and I can't speak for everyone, but from my perspective and my experience and my insight, I would say we have and I'm going to say this in a strange way, we have the greatest opportunity to be the healthiest that church has been. Whether we take advantage of it or not is one thing, but we are positioned to be the healthiest we've ever been if we're willing to take the opportunity to become healthy.
Yeah.
And I think I'm very mindful of not focusing on all the negative energy, right? We're far from perfect. The pandemic exposed a lot for church. and for God's people. And that's why I say we're so positioned right now because of the exposure, right? Because we weren't as positioned as we should have been to provide insight, to provide resources, to be real help, to be a guiding force, right? To have answers, to be the solution, to be the hub. We missed a lot of those opportunities in that time, but it helped us see where we need to be.
Yeah.
So that's why I say when you have exposure like that reveals something and you see, oh my gosh, this was weak and this is where I missed the mark. That's that pivotal moment to become healthy. And we're in that space right now. And I'm hoping many of our spiritual leaders, and I say that because there aren't all pastors.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that specifically. Many of our spiritual leaders, along with pastors, have the greatest opportunity to become what we were intended to be, right? And I feel like church is evolving and we're in such a pivotal space. And I heard you say when you were asking the questions, like, because some walked away from church, right? Many don't want to be in church. And I think really going back to its original intent instead of what it had evolved into is the greatest opportunity we have to be the church, right? The ecclesia, opposed to being something that was in the box. And I'm not saying out of the box because of, oh, let's be innovative. I'm saying out of the context and the construct that was developed through tradition with church. We have a chance to put that down and be something authentic and really be a source of real help, real love, real solution, real creativity, and real answer, and really be the light that we were intended to be if we move in that direction.
That is an excellent answer. And going back to the original intent, what we were supposed to be, so many pastors are fearful of letting go of the old construct and moving into a new paradigm. Some of them were frozen, paralyzed when we went sheltered in place because they were like, oh my God, my money, They were just so fearful for that, so it's like getting them to change and be ready to embrace something new is like 75% of the battle, 95% of the battle, because people want it.
Well, I think that too was a part of what was revealed. What were we anchored in?
Yeah.
What had we gotten comfortable with, right? And now as an organization and a business-minded church, everything became about the money, right? For some people, I won't say for everyone, but for some people, to your point, oh, we need to keep the doors open because when we return, because you have to remember at the pivotal point of this, no one knew how long this thing was gonna go.
Right.
So they were trying to find ways to maintain until that maintenance started to need sustainability because it kept going. And in that time, a lot of the changes that took place, people start saying, do I really want to go back? Was I getting what I needed? So the evaluation and the assessment started to take place spiritually with individuals in our lives that made you go, wait a minute. If I had what I really thought I was getting from there, would I be in this place? And what do I need to do as an individual? And if you talk to many people like I did, everybody started going on this personal pursuit.
Yeah.
Like, who am I?
Yeah.
What do I need from God? What am I looking for? Because we all had to personally and individually collide with who we thought we were, who we wanted to be, and now who we're evolving into. And no one escaped that space.
With both of us having over 25 years experience in ministry, we both have, connection with countless people that we could name names that still ain't went back to church, and it's like, why don't the senior leaders just adapt a hybrid schedule, and the ones that want to be zoomed in, change the construct, just change the way you do church. Instead of wanting like butts and seats, back to the old landmark, it's just not going to work. And people are fighting against it. They're showing you that it's not.
They are, and I'm always under the philosophy of it's not either or, it's both and.
Yes.
Right? And I think we have an opportunity to have a both and experience as we're educating and developing God's people. And one way is not wrong or better than the other. We have to figure out a way to evolve together, and it's an opportunity. People think, oh, this has caused this. No, thank God we've been able to evolve to something greater, to impact more and do it differently. I still sometimes go back into the church house too and in the building. And they're in there to educate. And I think that's the difference. We're not in there just to have this emotional experience, right? Nothing's wrong with that in worship. Nothing's wrong with the emotional experience. Again, that's a comma. But when you're in there to educate, when you're in there to equip, our Sunday mornings are like training, right? It's like boot camp, you know, it's not a typical traditional Sunday morning message. It is really developing and equipping people to go and do what they're called to do outside of that 2-hour window. And whether you do that online, in a classroom, in the auditorium, in the space, we have to prepare people for war. We have to prepare them to mobilize, to stand. And we need to do that in multifaceted ways. One way is no longer the answer.
Right. Well, speaking of multifaceted ways, you have embarked upon something new, something that you've never done before. You are an author now. I am looking forward to the premiere of your book called Mindversations. So tell us about it.
Mindversations. Well, it's going to be a part of my journey, right? So it will talk about things. And if people know me, I'm very private, right? And so you don't often catch me giving you a whole bunch of nothing unless we're really close and have those conversations. But life has taken me on such a journey that it's given me the privilege and the confidence to be transparent. And this book is transparent, and it's going to talk about something that the Holy Spirit coined as mindversations, because I started to talk about, identify, and rehearse, and then weaponize the conversations I was having in my mind. And people will see, and you talked about family and faith, from that point to this point, the roller coaster and the ebb and flows of my mind conversations started to consume me. Wow. And I'll talk about that in the book, how on the outside, I exhibited the faith I was taught and the faith I knew, but that faith also taught me not to be honest with my struggle.
Wow.
That's not what faith is, right? And so I go through a lot of my collisions that I had in my mental thoughts. And while I knew the word, because people have heard me teach, I knew the word, but for whatever reason, what I went through, the casualties and the turbulence in life, had me at a standstill on the inside of my thoughts that made me not be able to move forward. I got stuck. And so I'm talking about how many of you have conversations with yourself that you don't realize the fruit of those conversations manifest.
And all the things that you teach, most of the time, I'm not going to say everything that you teach you have to live, but God will cause you to have to walk out what you teach. And sometimes you get to the point where you say, I'm not going to teach this at all because I don't want to have to go through this. So for you to say that, you know, the kind of faith that you had, it kind of, you know, locked you up to where you weren't even able to move forward because you got to keep this veneer going. You got to act like you're the strong one, but yet on the inside, you're basically crumbling. And how do you stand in that state? So yeah, I get it. When is the book coming out? Do you have a date of, you know, publishing yet?
Not yet. So you'll hear me talking about it more. The book should probably come out the top of the year. I didn't want to do Christmas because it's a whole lot of stuff happening that time. So I'm thinking early at the top of the year, but you'll hear me talking more about it, having more segments on it, giving some excerpts from the book.
You got to
prepare people for it because it's a powerful journey that I'm allowing people to have a 3D experience with me and then go on this journey to talk about something that's real that most Christians probably don't really talk about.
Well, I don't want to try to, how can I say it? I don't want to try to get into your book before time and say, well, let's be the first one. You heard it here first. But I want you to just give us a snippet of not so much an excerpt, but like maybe like what's one of the topics in the book that would be really interesting?
Let me see, maybe 3, the war of mindversations. So waging war. And I talk about how what I was presenting was so strong. People would say, you don't look like you've been through nothing. You look so good. And literally I was suffocating other people. And they never knew. And I make a statement in there and I talk about you get so hurt when you feel like people don't see you.
You do.
But people can't see you when you're masked.
You ain't finna make me start crying. Look,
You get hurt.
You ain't gonna do me like a Barbara Walters and I'm gonna sit up and start crying because I can relate so much to what you're saying.
It's real. But we'll act like it don't matter because we're taught to be so strong and we're taught to be so faith bound and we're taught to be like, you're good, just turn the cheek and all those things, and not that you won't. But the reality is, and the authentic truth is, you want to be seen.
Yeah.
But people can't see something that's hidden. You can't see somebody that's masked. And so I would say, how come everyone is saying, man, you don't look like you've been through nothing. You didn't miss a beat. You don't need nobody. You're so strong. Exactly. And I went through this journey feeling so alone. And I said to myself, the faith that you portrayed and that you believed, it masked people from seeing the humanity that would have magnified or called them to that wounded space. But what I wanted to portray hid the wounded space. So I couldn't get mad that they couldn't see me when I was hiding what I wanted them to see.
Just what you have said in the last 3 minutes has just been eye-opening. So for whoever knows Aurora, Family and Faith, all of what we went through, all of what you went through, I'm not gonna name no names, but just what you just said is blowing the cover off of some things for what people thought was going on. That's why I felt like this interview was so important. So I want to ask you, because we'll get further down in that as we go, from the perspective of your experience as a pastor's wife, and I can say, at Family and Faith and working in the ministry together as senior leaders, husbands and wives, how do you balance the couple dynamic as it relates to the ministry? Because I always see the power struggle between couples, not just, what I watch with you, but I know so many people in ministry. I have so many stories. I could actually write a separate book on just that, just the power struggle alone. So how do you balance that dynamic?
You know what? That's interesting. And we did have our fair share of that because you're both evolving.
Yeah.
At that time, Mark and I were young and we were new. We were ambitious. We knew what God had called us to do. We were on fire. We were persistent in what we were building for him, right? Yeah. And I think the more he evolved as the leader, right, at that time as my husband, he had the vision, but God gave me color, right? He gave me details. He let me fill that thing in with what he gave me. And sometimes I was coloring and he was like, whoa, you just changed that. You made it look, what you doing? Slow down, And so we had that back and forth space. And still to this day, we often say if we didn't do anything right, we did do ministry well together.
You did. Y'all did.
Yeah, we did that. But what I realized where the struggle comes in is when you don't have that personal strength.
Yeah.
Right. And so once you start distrusting or mistrusting in the marriage, it comes over into the power couple of ministry.
Yes.
Then the enemy starts to throw your gift at each other, right? And now you're waging war with gifts and with what God's given you. And I feel like that is where things became more challenging for us because of what we were dealing with personally, right? And that interferes with the ministry. It makes it a lot more harder.
I mean, I've served senior leaders for over 30 years. And I remember one morning, the husband and wife were fighting at home and it came into the church. And I was the armor bearer at the time. And we used to sit in the pulpit and it was elevated. And she said, we're not, and her seat was next to his. Ours were like to the left and to the right of the senior leaders. And she said, we're not sitting in the pulpit today. She made a spectacle and had us sit with her down on the floor, power struggle. And he was motioning to her to come up here and she humiliated him in front of 700 people. So it's very difficult.
Why? That personal emotional experience outside of the calling.
Yeah.
Right? Outside of that gift, outside of that title is where wounds take place.
Yes.
And then when you are come in wounded, you can't help sometimes, but for that blood to expose, because now you're still in a battle and you don't walk into the titled space from an emotional space. Yeah. And a lot of people don't do that well long term.
Yes.
You and I for a bit, a long term, that thing starts to ooze out and you're like, oh, shoot, I can't hide this pain, right? or the reality of what you're trying to figure out much longer.
For you to say long term, that's the key.
Absolutely. See, I was clear about that.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. So what has been your number one challenge working in ministry in general?
I don't know if I have just one number one challenge.
Tell me about it. I can name 5 if somebody.
I'm like, number one. You know what? I don't know. I think I would say humanity.
Yes.
I know that probably sounds strange to say, what's the problem in ministry? Humanity.
I get it.
Because we're human first, even though we're called and we're anointed and we're powerful and we're gifted. But all of us, I'm not saying certain people, but everyone goes through the experience of evolving to being able to balance the anointed one and the woman or man of humanity.
Right.
And I think that falsehood makes you try to take on something to make yourself almost not human.
Yes. Then live up to the that's unrealistic.
Yeah. It's not even an option. It's not even possible. Right. So now you're setting out to be a partial human.
Right.
Present more anointing and power and gift, because that's what people do when they put that man or woman of God on a pedestal.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that leads, ma'am, you gave me perfect segue into this next question. Because I said, okay, how am I going to phrase it? In the African-American culture, historically, leaders have been placed in what I consider unfair positions of expectation on every level. So what do you think has precipitated that type of idealistic thinking? I mean, was it generational? Is it, the African-American diaspora that that's the way we are? We're monolithic in that. I mean, where do you think that started?
You know what? This may be strange, but I'm going to say, I think it goes way back to slavery.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That the people weren't allowed to read, right? They weren't allowed to really study. And so you would sneak off, because the person that did learn to read, you're reading the Bible and you're learning. That's where your hope came from. And you looked at them like your savior, your answer, your hope, your way out, the way they brought the word. And it just continued to build like that person is everything, because they're going to get me out. They're going to help me escape. They're going to build me. They're going to connect me to God. They become like your God, because that was what was most tangible, right? And I think that experience started to continue like a snowball. It kept growing and evolving and growing. And so for the African-American church, dealing with slavery and mindset and possessions and all the fight and struggle, you add all that in there, here's the fruit of what that looks like.
That's true.
And yes, the Bible says the man or woman of God is worthy of that double honor. Yes, they should be acknowledged for their labor, and you should love them and all those things, but it has to be balanced. And we as African-Americans haven't done well balancing someone that's gifted and called with humanity as a human leader.
That's the reason why when they fall into human frailty, we assassinate their character.
Tear them up, down, and spit them out, because you can't believe they had the audacity to be human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and then because they're put on such a high pedestal, they can't show the little foxes that are eating up their vine. And by the time they do, it explodes and they're gone to prison. They fell off. It's huge.
I mean, it blew up. It blows up. And that's what I'm talking about. And I talk about that even in the book, because we portray faith as something that it's not. But it's what religion has taught us to present it as.
Yeah.
From the minute we can understand that that's not what it's supposed to look like, and we can be human with what we believe and our hope in Jesus Christ and what we want to be and what we're not, and it's okay to fall. Once we release all of that, we're going to position ourselves not just to be more effective and more efficient in delivering the word and living the word. We'll be transformed to actually become what the word intended for us to become. But that's the same opportunity we've been presented after post-pandemic.
But on the flip side, you also have the members who see all the craziness with pastors and make excuses for them. They see that, like, for instance, the pastor makes a pass at a woman and she accepts and they go to bed and they're covering all that stuff up. I mean, all the members that know the stuff that the senior leader is into and just turns a blind eye, says, oh, well, they're only human. And they take the humanity and they wear it as cloak rather than demanding, rather than going as a Nathan. There needs to be more Nathans in the church. It would have saved so many churches had that happened.
And I think it's not being human in totality. It's like understanding the human part of you that's evolving and transforming. And I think that's where we fail in our frailties, is we're not supposed to live in that thing, right?
Exactly.
We're not supposed to live in it. Yes, we can't. He created us first human being, right? And then he breathed into us spirit, and then he skinned us and we became flesh. So that's in there. But the spirit part of us should be leading. It should be provoking, right? It should be convicting. It should be bringing us to a space of conversion. And that's what happens. And if we could anchor ourselves in the transparency of the word while we're doing this, you find that, and I won't call it balance, because every season what you should be balancing looks different. So you won't really know what that looks like. But I think we have an opportunity to present and model something that hasn't yet been modeled.
Yeah, man, the opportunity is grand.
It's grand.
And whoever can come up with that, it will just be like a runaway train, literally.
Yeah. And maybe it's just being honest. I made this mistake and I'm wrong. I don't want to stay here. This is what I'm doing to fix it. I'm working at. You have to be showing your progressive. It's not okay to acknowledge it, see it, support it, and let it grow. That's where our mistake has been.
I have saw that authenticity explodes, even if it's in error. Like, I'll just say his name because he's all over the internet, Larry Reed Live. I mean, because he's so crazy and says stuff that don't nobody have the guts to say. There's like 40, 50,000 people found him. People want realness. They want transparency. They want, if you look a mess, just come on there looking a mess. Like me and you were just talking about that. You look fabulous. But I'm saying, like how I told you, we were talking, and you were saying you're all made up. I said, but there's times I come on here with no makeup on, glasses, ball cap at the gym. People want realness. So with that being said, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on, because me and you both, you were my pastor at Family and Faith. I was privileged, and it was really a privilege, man. There's the stories when I think about the shepherd. So many stories.
Yes.
And we had so much fun. I was there 6 years at Family and Faith before I left. But I feel like I told you before, I am qualified to do this interview. And this is the first time ever that you even, I didn't even think we was going to make this happen. I was like, this ain't going to happen. But we had to cancel.
I know.
I said, this ain't going to happen. I said, if we don't do this today, I'm just going to forget it. I knew it was just really hard because of our schedules, but I said, anybody, I'm qualified to do it because I walk with you in the ministry. I was on the shepherd staff, and I saw when the first brick was pulled out of the wall, basically, metaphorically. So I had wanted to, get into this part of the interview and ask you, I wanted to discuss the challenges, of the ministry, which we've been kind of like saying that all down through this interview. But I want you to unveil some of the reasons the public may not have, even taken into consideration, what happens when a church collapses. People just feel like everything's going good one day, and all of a sudden, y'all was hiding this stuff for 7 years. No, that's not what happened. So let's go back to 2009. When the doors of Family and Faith closed. I remember I left maybe 6 months before, or something like that. And it's like, what was the first indication to you that there was smoke? You didn't see the fire, but there was smoke.
I don't even know how to answer that best. I'm trying to, because there's two smokes, right? So there's the natural smoke in marriage,
Yeah.
You feel like you're maintaining and you're working through while you're trying to do ministry. And
So
that smoke is there, right? And you're
So
trying to figure that, because our whole thing is, and traditionally we're taught, you work it out, you talk through it, you figure it out, you do all that. And so when you think you're doing that, even though there's smoke, your expectation is not that it's gonna blow up. But then when you start to see smoke on the other side, now it's showing up in ministry, you like, oh, this it's real smoky in
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think I can remember a couple times early on where I'm sitting in service and I can see chaos all around me spiritually. I'm going,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
bad,
Yeah.
right?
Because you have the prophetic gift, you can see stuff that other people can't
Spiritually
see.
first. And
Yeah.
so while I knew there was smoke naturally, spiritually, I started seeing the fire. And I'm like, it's
Right.
worse than I know.
Yes.
And not because I knew anything, but sensitivity in the spirit was like, man, something is magnifying. It's not, something is off, and I'm
And Trina, and there was members that had separate fires in their families. Stuff going on simultaneously.
It was like contagious.
Yeah.
It's like something started to spread, and I'm like, all right, something has gotten seeped in the space of foundation of this, and it's popping up everywhere. And I was always, and people that know me can attest, I was definitely prophetic and spiritually driven. And so all I need to do is I have to pray, I have to intercede, I have to fast. And so I'm doing all that type of spiritual warfare while it's still magnifying, right? And I'm going,
yes.
And it came to one point where it was like, the more I pray, the more I ask God to show up and give me, I'm like, is this him showing up?
Right. Right.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you're praying for an answer and a solution. Do you have to stop and go, because what you see manifesting, you want to say it's the enemy. And at one point I had to stop and go, wait, is this you?
Right. Right.
And that was for me the first real smoke of, oh shoot, this gonna go south. And that was a hard moment because I still didn't know all the details. I just spiritually could feel and sense and know. And so while we may have had some strong turbulence in our marriage, and I had all my assumptions and all my thoughts and all my notes, and I'm Inspector Gadget, like you have all these things happening, but my spirit kept saying, it's worse than that.
And so as things were starting to unfold, one of the purposes of this interview is to, a lot of people from Aurora will probably eventually watch this and they know the story. Many of them were members. We had almost 1,000 people there at one time. Mm-hmm. And it's like, as a senior leader, and I've been in leadership position for years and years and years. How do you handle when people come up to you with an accusation that is not true? It's like, how do you handle the bombardment of perception? Because I'm sure in Aurora, you probably felt like a pariah when that stuff when the walls started falling down. How did you handle the pressure of that? Even going out in public and knowing people were whispering and people were saying things. How did you handle that emotionally?
You know what? I will say, I don't know if I handled it well. I'll tell you how I handle it, but I don't know if I handled it well, to be honest, on this side of it. But it was like, honestly, going underwater and just holding your breath.
I bet.
And every day I would get ready to go out the house like, and I would just go. And I hold my breath through all these exchanges, interactions, engagements, people looking, people walking away, people staring, hearing rumors. And I'm just like, does anybody realize what just happened to me?
Yeah.
Do you I just lost everything? My family is hurting. My family fell apart. I don't even know where we're going to live. Like, I had to figure so many things out. And everyone had their own assumptions and their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own ideations of what and why. And I'm like, just hold your breath until you get back home. And literally I would go back home exhausted.
And I remember seeing you physically, you were just dropping weight. I mean, I had actually got a phone call from somebody that said they saw you in the mall and they were just astonished at how thin you were. And I said, that's stress.
Yeah.
And people they look at you and they talk, but where was your support system in all of that?
You know what? I'll say two things. One, I didn't have much of a support system outside of like my parents, like, babe, we got you, daddy, like, whatever you need. And mom, like, I'm going to pray you through this. Outside of like my siblings trying to figure out how to help, it was me. And I don't know if it was just me because they weren't there or me because I didn't allow anyone to be there. I think it was a little of both. You know what? I'll just be very frank. I did not know how to give people the weight of that hurt. I didn't.
That makes sense.
I didn't know how to hand something off that was killing me with the potential of what it may do to somebody else. So I held it. I literally engulfed it, right? Because I don't want this to ruin you. I don't want you to feel what I feel.
Right. Yeah.
Because if it's taking me out, it's going to take you out. And so I prayed, and this is crazy. That's what I don't know if I handle it. I prayed for strength to hold something that I shouldn't have held alone.
Wow. And
do
you feel you got that strength? Do you feel your prayer was answered, or it just?
I feel like I did it, but I feel like I could have done it healthier. I could have done it better. I could have done it with support, and that's how I got to the space where my conversations became toxic. Because I only was processing with myself. And so the fear of my interpretation of what people were thinking, you think I didn't know they were looking at how small I got? You think I didn't know they was making up reasons why I was that small?
Right.
They think I didn't know they were talking about me and how many affairs or rumors or what happened, or did she know? I would hear people say, did you know? Did you lie? No, as intuition as a woman, you know something's off.
Right.
I have all the pieces. No, I didn't, and so that'll eat away at you when you feel like you know something, you can't find the proof of it.
I know. Yes. You become, Inspector Gadget, you trying to figure out
being, you. And then when it all hits the fans, there's nothing like that feeling of, and I think it sucked the life out of me internally. And while I knew I had to keep going for my children, I had to now become the sole provider. I had to fight. I had to keep their minds. I had to keep their spirits. And so that's what I describe by being on the water, holding that breath, because I had to get through for them. And in doing that, my body started to respond.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, how I felt watching me go from that size all the way down to a 4.
You went to a 4?
To a 4.
Oh my God. Let me tell you something. And I'm saying this for our viewers to sit back and think about this perspective. This is when I knew there was a change in you. It was the first time I had picked up on it. When we used to take us, where was this place was it Eagle Ridge where we used to go
for our women advances?
Yes. And we went, this was my second one or did I go? I don't even think I went. I didn't go. I only think I went one time. And then the next year, I didn't make it, but I got some feedback. And I said, there's something wrong, because you typically would have a certain amount of women in your house with you. And this particular trip, you cut mostly, you said, nobody's going to stay with me. You only had it was only a couple of people. Now, maybe it was the report I got was wrong, but it was like your whole lineup was different. You basically were off to yourself more than really interacting a lot with the women. I said, it's stress. She's under a lot of pressure. You guys are looking at it like she's being selfish. No, there's something wrong. She's under a lot of pressure. People need to take those cues when someone makes an immediate left turn or goes in a 90-degree angle. It's not selfish. It's not emotional. This is spiritual. This is something that's going on. And people that are close to this person need to sit up and take notice. And when they told me that, I said, that's not good. I knew it wasn't good because that wasn't your character. And so senior leaders and leaders in general give off signs of stress. If you pay attention and you really work closely with them, you know that there's something not right.
Yeah, and it's interesting that was the report of their space, because my perspective was, I'm down here and I'm going to give them all I have, regardless of what's going on.
And you've always done that.
I'm going to take this personal time to work through my strength and let God give me what I need for them, because I love them. And their perspective was, she's not spending time with us. So I think it's selfish on both parts. While they're accusing me of being selfish, they're exemplifying selfishness.
Yes.
Wanting, and they don't realize the pull that they put on. Everybody wanted me to be everything to them, for them at all times, times whatever hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And that's the human part, that God gives us grace as a leader to be able to absorb many things and take many hits, and to be able to pour out and to give times multiple. He does that. But when you don't have as much as you had in certain seasons to, depend on that strength, it becomes more complicated, right? To do it. It's like, how do you pour empty? So me spending time had nothing to do not wanting to be with them. It had to do with everything. Like, I know I have to be intentional about getting something in me so that I can pour.
Yes.
A little different perspective.
Yeah. I am currently, along with probably a lot of other people, watching a couple of churches implode right now. I mean, that were like huge and are literally imploding. And you are a Gen Xer. So I'm thinking of the millennial generation of pastors, because I see most of the challenge now is in their houses, because the millennials ride on the grace message till the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
And I was in Houston trying to check that in the church that I was in, and tell the millennials, you cannot stay in sin and ride on the grace message and feel like there's no consequence. You cannot do that, And so the Lord showed me a dream in the last 3 to 4 weeks and said, I'm getting ready to uncover. I'm getting ready to stop this, this explosion of sin in my house, and nobody's teaching the word that grace is, the scripture about you wearing it as a cloak.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what would be your advice to a husband and wife that are in their early 30s and they explode in ministry and they're rapidly growing? What would be your advice to them, how to walk in ministry, how to avoid some of the pitfalls in ministry that you ended up going? I know that's a loaded question. And it's probably, that's a book. Basically,
I don't have time for the real answer.
Exactly. But I would say to the female pastor, what would you give her as advice? Because I see now the church is imploding, and the females are just flapping in the wind, trying to hold on to the horse, because here they are again, along for the ride, and had no control over everything that happened along the way. So what would you tell them?
You know what? I would start off with saying, identify some accountability. You need somebody that's going to tell your butt the truth.
That's good.
You need accountability, and not someone that's also not accountable to someone.
Right.
Yes. Right. You need the lineage of accountability, because it's going to be your anchor and your strength. And when you find someone that you're accountable to, and you see how, if they're doing something that you know is not aligned with the word, find a new accountability partner.
Trina, that is
not going to hold you accountable for something they're not accountable to themselves.
Yes.
And that's where I think it all starts, because when ministry takes off, God wants to blow it up. He wants his powerful experience on earth to be everything he intended for it to be, because we're fulfilling an assignment. So he wants to magnify and expand the territory, but he wants to expand the territory in you first. So when you stop expanding and letting him have territory in you, that's when you know your territory on earth is going to be impacted, and now things are going to seep in. If you don't have somebody saying, hey, pull this aside, hey, I'm sensing this.
Man.
You need a prophetic voice in your ear that's also living the word, and you know that their voice is accountable to somebody. Everybody needs that accountability, because that's what's going to halfway keep bringing you back to the center.
And the churches that I'm watching that are, like I said, currently imploding, for you to say that if they have gotten accountability from day one, that is the reins that keeps them centered. Yeah. Now I'm looking at how people are coming in trying to give advice in the implosion, and it's being rejected because that horse is out of the barn. It's been gone too long. It's been out to pasture doing what it wants, and you can't rein that back in. So now it's like when the advice is coming in and the counsel is coming in, they're looking at it like you're against me. They're looking at it like, you're betraying me. You're trying to shut me down. You're trying to take my ministry. It's like now they don't even accept the advisement. It's too late.
And you know what? Because the trust wasn't built in the beginning of that accountability. When it's not there, you're always going to go on the defense. You're going to go in protective mode. You're trying to take what God is doing, you're trying to take what I built, and you go into that space because you're operating out of fear, right? And we know fear is dangerous. The fruits of fear is dangerous, and everything that comes with it. You get anxiety, you get paranoid, you get defensive, you get angry, you get all these things that stir up. And you'll see many leaders in that space when the enemy starts messing up them on the inside and it starts showing up. Yeah, it comes in and now you want to tear it up. It's bringing a rage out of them now, and now you can't find access.
You have I'm telling you, you have nailed it. You have hit the nail on the head. That's exactly emotionally, physically, mentally, all the things that you just named is what I'm watching happening in a couple of these pastors. The paranoia, the fear, and then you even see a transformation physically on the outside. They start dressing different, looking different. I mean, that's a clue to members. If you see your senior leaders start to do unusual apparel and doing things, that's a clear indication something on the inside is out of kilter.
It is. And I think it's easy for us to sometimes see those things through the natural eye and then start gossiping, start talking, and you start tearing them down. Look at them. Again, not taking into account your own life, first of all.
Right.
But where are the people that should be praying and interceding? Praying that accountability, praying that their heart would turn so they can hear somebody, so that somebody can rescue their soul. Their soul's at stake.
Yes.
Right? And people don't realize it's your soul at stake. It's your mind at war. And those things start to implode and then they manifest externally. That's what you're describing. The war on the inside starts to manifest externally, and everybody sees this external response to what's happening. And like, oh my gosh, did you see that? Instead of going, oh my God, their soul is at war. Yeah. Let me pray for accountability. Let me pray that somebody reaches them, somebody breaks through the Lord, and start praying for that space. But we're not the best at that.
Yeah, I get it. I do. And viewers, let me say this to you, because I'm getting ready to bring this to a close. I have seen this over 30 years. The pattern is the same. God is the same yesterday, today, forevermore. Yeah. And when it comes to a church that's in trouble, he begins warnings, sometimes years in advance, and he will begin with the senior leaders. And then when there isn't a change, he will begin to show dreams to you guys. I can't tell you how many members have come to me, and even as recent as the last couple of weeks, giving me dreams about their ministry, telling me, this is what the Lord showed me in the dream. The Lord will begin to talk to you. And some of you need to pray for the counsel of a Nathan to fall upon you. Ask the Lord for permission. You never know. You could be the one that would be instrumental in helping your senior leaders save themselves and then ultimately saving the ministry. But what we do as members is, what do we do? Like Katrina just said, we gossip, we talk about it. We have the dream, we tell each other, but we don't tell anybody else.
Yeah. That's so real, June. I think back, and I think it's vital to encourage people that's watching and listening. You can never assume that your observation is the truth.
Right.
You can't assume that your perception is the full story. It's an indication of something, but you may not have the full story. So you need insight from God. You need insight from God. The Bible tells us to watch and to pray, right?
Yes.
So you have to be able to do both, but you should be praying about what you're watching and what you see. And I encourage everybody, build relationships early. That's built out of truth,
Yes,
built out of authenticity, and built out of prayer from the beginning. Because when you do that, you'll get so far, but you'll know that that person that's been there, that's truthful, you'll come back, and in your alone time, you're going, they're right, because they've been here with me. I trust them. And when you don't have that thing, that someone that's in that space, you really get left alone because you don't trust people that come in the middle of your situation.
Right. That's true. That is so true.
Yeah.
Come in the middle of your situation. They were never there from ground zero. So how do you know what their intentions are? What their true intent is? Yeah. Wow.
It would definitely have to be a God assignment to know that, oh, God sent this person as an answered prayer to help me navigate this situation. And both people would have to be spiritual enough to acknowledge that it's an assignment.
And that's a very good perspective for you to say that, for you know, to explain why the senior leaders or the leaders reject the advice or reject, you know, someone coming in while the building is on fire trying to pull them out. So that makes so much sense. I will say this though, all of what you've went through, when we think about all of the things that seem so catastrophic for us, we still survived, you know. And I will say, you as a senior leader, an educator, a prophet, all the things that you have went through have made you such a spectacular leader and world traveler. You can speak. I'm like, one day I want to be like you and speak in Ghana and Nigeria, you know, and wave your hand and 1,700 people fall. I mean, you have really been blessed, and the Lord, you know, has just created a monumental ministry and educational, you know, gift in you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the things that you're going to do in the future. I know it's going to be great. I'm going to be a part of coming to it and helping.
Yes.
And just clapping you on and cheering you on from the sidelines. So I just want to thank you so much today for this. It was great.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for, you know, although I was a bit nervous, I knew I was in a better place to have the conversation because of the healing process that I've gone through.
Yes.
You know, I had a long wilderness moment and it has done me good, you know, and I feel better than I ever have. I feel more confident in God. I feel stronger. I feel more insightful. I feel more in tune than I ever have been. And it allows me to talk about the journey in the past and be transparent without the emotional attack of it. You know what I mean? And although I was like, will I cry? Because I know what I've been through, but I felt such peace and so much healing and talking about it. Why? Because I want to help everybody that God assigns me to help. I want people to encounter freedom and peace and restitution and transformation and full healing and be whole. And we can't do that without being transparent, without finding somebody to be accountable to, without wanting to do the real work. I had to do the real work.
Yes.
People want the power. They want the anointing. They want the capacity. They want the territory. They
don't want to put the work in.
You can't do that if you don't put the work in. And sometimes the work comes with turbulence.
Yes, it does.
With trouble.
Yes.
And you have to be able to endure because that's what evolves you. That's what equips you. It's what prepares you. And unfortunately, I had a whole lot of it. So I feel real prepared right about
it. You definitely are. Yeah. Man, I'm telling you, I think back on all the things that we went through, all the things that you went through, and it's amazing where we're standing at today.
Literally.
And able to, you know, talk about it and encourage others. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I will say, anybody that's listening, this ain't gonna be no fabulous send off as far as what sign off. No fabulous sign off. Ain't no music getting ready to come on. Ain't no graphics getting ready to show. Right. So if you know how to do that, you need to hit me up because all we're gonna be saying is bye.
All right, bye.
Bye. See everybody. I'll be on doing my next Transpirations in December.